Don't mind me, I'm a hot mess today and I couldn't give two shits, so you're just gonna have to put up with this. Worse than usual. Now, we all love music. Some of us love country, some of us love pop, others love rap, and others love rock and metal, which is me. But some bands have a very tragic past on how they either formed and came together or disbanded. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 rock metal bands that have tragic pasts. And it's nearly like some of these bands have just been cursed right from the beginning. That's what it's like. It's like a massive curse has just hovered over these particular bands and have just created this horrible scenario for them. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. If you don't know what's going on here, well, I'm definitely not a beauty channel because look at this monstrosity, but I am a horror artist and I like to draw what I talk about in the videos. Now, I like scary facts, true crimes, anything to do with the paranormal, aliens, all that kind of stuff, and I like to draw, so what I do is I combine all of that into these videos to hopefully bring you a unique experience. Now, if you want to support me in any way, shape or form, I do have a Redbubble store that is down in the description below. You can go and purchase my prints from these videos if you like my drawings. I don't blame you if you don't. And I also have an Etsy store where I make felt toy patterns, and they are horror characters from movies. There's some of my own designs on there. I've just recently done Giorgio from Ancient Aliens because I have a platonic crush on Giorgio. I love him. So you can head across there and you can get yourself a step-by-step pattern and make some of the characters I have available. I'm trying to add new ones regularly, so always check back if you are interested, and the links are down in the description for that as well. Now let's get on with the video and let's get on with the drawing. Windir, which means warrior in English, was a Norwegian black metal band from Sunndal, Norway, that was formed in 1994 by the band's vocalist Tarjei Bakken, who was also known as Velfa. The band's sound was a combo of black metal and Scandinavian folk music, which is classed as Viking metal, and the band's lyrics were written in Sognemål, which is a Western Norwegian dialect spoken in the area of Son. But they did branch out into English to appeal to a broader audience eventually. They had released 4 albums, and their lead singer and founder, Velfa, was an all-rounder, being the vocals, but also being able to play guitar, bass, keyboard and accordion on the albums. Velfa's lyrics centered around his hometown of Sunndal, and it did start off as a one-man band with just Velfa, hence the reason why he could play so many instruments. But he eventually recruited some of his mates later on with the 3rd album. Unfortunately, the band came to an untimely demise in 2004. On the 14th of January 2004, Vella left his home and went to walk to his parents' cabin in Fagagedi, but didn't realise that the weather was going to go bad with a downpour of snow that was way heavier than expected. Velfa never made it to his parents' home. On the 17th of January 2004, Velfa's body was found at Reppenstollen in the Sunndal Valley. He had died of hypothermia. He apparently realised it was getting bad and tried to turn back to his home, but unfortunately didn't make it. After Velfa's funeral on the 27th of January 2004, the remaining band members decided to end Windir, so the band ceased to exist ever again. Velfa was only 25 years old. Some people even say that Velfa's death is one of the most metal ways to die. Death was an American death metal band that was formed in Altamonte Springs, Florida in 1983 by guitarist and vocalist Chuck Schuldiner. Death was one of the first death metal bands created and is apparently considered one of the most influential bands on the heavy metal scene. The band was originally called Mantis in 1983 to 1984 before Chuck changed the name to Death after his brother died and he wanted to turn his death into something positive. Chuck was labelled the godfather of death metal, even though he was not fond of the nickname. Chuck was a massive perfectionist, and this was known in the metal industry as he preferred to work with studio musicians. Death released 7 official albums, but tragedy struck the frontman. In 1999, Chuck started to experience severe neck pain and was later diagnosed with cancer of the brainstem, and on his 32nd birthday. In January 2000, he underwent surgery in New York to remove the tumour in his head, which was initially successful, but in May 2001, his cancer came back, but Chuck did not have the money for more surgery. Many artists such as Korn, Kid Rock, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers got together and auctioned off belongings to raise money for Chuck, as his medical insurance wouldn't pay out as his cancer predated his insurance startup date. The auction was poorly managed and Chuck only received a small amount of money. In December of 2001, Chuck was not in good shape, and on the 13th of December 2001, Chuck died at just 34 years old. Death disbanded after Chuck's death. Lynyrd Skynyrd is an American band that was formed in Jacksonville, Florida. Before settling on the name Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1969, they were first called My Backyard in 1964 and then toured around to small venues for 5 years under various different names. In the 1970s, they popularized Southern rock with the songs Sweet Home Alabama and Free Bird. Lead vocalist was Ronnie Van Zant, Gary Rosington on guitar, Alan Collins, guitar as well, Larry Johnstone, bass guitar, and Bob Burns on drum. But Bob left and was replaced with Artemis Pyle in 1974, and another guitarist, Ed King, joined in 1973, but was replaced with Steve Gaines in 1976. But on the 20th of October 1977, tragedy struck the band when their chartered plane crashed, killing band members Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, and backup singer Cassie Gaines, who was Steve's sister, and then seriously injuring the rest of the band members. They had just performed at the Greenville Memorial Auditorium in Greenville, South Carolina, and they were on their way to Baton Rouge, Louisiana for an appearance the following night. The plane had run out of fuel and the pilot tried to do an emergency landing but crashed into a heavily forested area roughly 10 kilometers from Gillsburg, Mississippi. An assistant road manager, pilot and co-pilot died on impact as well. This happened just 3 days after they released their 5th album, Street Survivors. This made the album go platinum. Lynyrd Skynyrd broke up for a while after the tragedy, from 1977 to 1987, but while this hiatus took place, more tragedy happened. Alan Collins lost his wife in 1980 after she had a massive hemorrhage after miscarrying their 3rd child, but Alan didn't take it well for years after. He drank excessively and did drugs, and then on the 29th of January 1986, he got behind the wheel of his Ford Thunderbird, intoxicated, and crashed it into a ditch, killing his girlfriend and leaving him permanently paralyzed from the chest down. Then in 1987, Lynyrd Skynyrd reunited with original band members Gary Rosington, Billy Powell, Leon Wilkeson, Artemis Pyle, and Ed King, and Ronnie's brother, Johnny Van Zant, took over as lead singer and main songwriter. Alan Collins couldn't be in the band due to being paralysed, but he came back as musical director. But on the 23rd of January 1990, Alan got pneumonia and died at the age of 37. But the tragedies still don't stop there. In 2001, bassist Leon Wilkeson was found dead in his hotel room from emphysema and liver disease. In 2009, keyboardist Billy Powell died of a heart attack in his Florida home at 56 years old. Then, bassist Ian Evans, who replaced Leon, died of cancer on the 6th of May 2009 at the age of 48. Then drummer Bob Burns died aged 64 in a car crash when he drove into a tree on the 3rd of April 2015. With no original members remaining, the band announced that they would continue on and are still together right now. The band goes down in history as one of the most unluckiest bands, along with the next band I'm going to talk about. The Allman Brothers Band was an American rock band that formed in Jacksonville, Florida, just like Lynyrd Skynyrd, in 1969 by brothers Dwayne and Greg Allman, and also included Dickie Betts, Barry Oakley, Butch Trucks, and Jai Johanny Johansson. Their music was described as southern rock, jazz, and blues rock, with their biggest hit being Rambling Man, released in 1973. Just as they seemed to be going in the right direction and doing really well, tragedy struck the band. The band was full of talented drug addicts, which was not an ideal mixture, with cocaine being their main drug of choice. On the 29th of October 1971, Dwayne Allman was only 24 years old when he died riding his motorbike down a Macon, Georgia road when he tried to pass a truck and failed, losing control of his bike, falling and being pinned underneath the truck, and was dragged for 15 meters. He underwent several hours of surgery, but he couldn't be saved. His injuries were absolutely massive. He had a collapsed chest, ruptured coronary artery, liver damage, amongst several other injuries. This is when it gets really weird. Bassist Barry Oakley was riding his motorbike in Macon, Georgia, to only a few blocks from where Dwayne got into his incident on the 11th of November 1972, so just a little over a year from Dwayne's death, when Barry lost control of his bike and collided with a bus. He survived it, but he refused medical attention, and later that day he died from swelling on the brain and a fractured skull. He too was only 24 years old. Barry apparently didn't know how to navigate the world without Dwayne, and he drank heavily because of it, and upon his death he was buried next to Dwayne. In 1976, the band broke up for a while after Greg Allman was done dealing drugs to the mafia. The breakup lasted 2 years, but when they got back together, creative differences created some awful albums called Reach for the Sky and Brothers of the Road. In 1982, the band went their separate ways again and stayed that way until 1989. Then, band members drummer Frankie Toller and his brother guitarist Dan Toller died in 2011 and 2013 at ages 59 and 65. They had joined the band in 1980. Original founding member Butch Trucks was 69 years old when he unalived himself in front of his wife by shooting himself. His wife rang emergency services straight away, but Butch died at the scene. Then, finally, in 2017, Greg Allman died at age 69 due to cancer that probably resulted from a very hard life of abusing his body with drugs and alcohol. I don't know what's going on there, but it really seems like a curse was hanging over this band, just like Lynyrd Skynyrd. It must have been something in the Jacksonville, Florida water. Hanoi Rocks was a Finnish rock band formed in 1979 in Helsinki, Finland by Michael Munro and his friend Andy McCoy, who played guitar. They moved to Stockholm, Sweden and lived on the streets begging for money, but Andy lived with his wealthy girlfriend. In 1980, they finally got a deal with Johanna Castanis and released their first single, I Want You. Gib Casino joined the band as drummer, and then they released their second single, Tragedy, in 1981, and their first album, Bangkok Shocks, Saigon Shakes, and Hanoi Rocks. Also, their second album was done in 1982, and the same year, the band permanently moved to London, where Michael met with Razzle, who was the drummer for London-based band The Dark. He asked to be their drummer, so they fired Gib, who had a drug problem and mental health issues anyway, and they put Razzle on. They recorded 3 more albums that launched them outside of Europe onto Japan and America, where Michael fractured his ankle during an onstage set in New York and shows had to be cancelled. From here, this is when tragedy struck the band. On the 8th of December 1984, the band, minus Michael because he was still recovering from a fractured ankle, had attended a party with Motley Crue at the lead singer's house, Vince Neil. The party came to a stop when they all realised that they were out of beer, so Vince and Razzle decided to do a beer run, but both were absolutely pissed out of their scones, but they still got behind the wheel of Neil's Pantera, with Neil driving. They made it to the Bottle-O, but on their way back, they got into a car accident that killed Razzle. He had died instantly in the crash. The people in the other car involved suffered brain damage and other serious injuries. Andy and Tommy Lee, drummer of Motley Crue, went looking for them when they didn't return for ages and found Vince handcuffed at the scene of the crash. They all returned back to London. Michael left the band in 1985, which ended the band. It wasn't until 2001 that Michael and Andy reformed Hanoi Rocks with just the 2 of them, plus a new member, Laku Laitinen. Then, in 2008, Laku left and they disbanded once again. Now let me know your thoughts on these band tragedies, and if you like any of these bands, let me know in the comment section below. Now the illustration that I decided to do for this video today is, once again, it's not my favourite, but I just tried to do something a little bit different, and I decided to do like half just black and white and the other half with a little bit of colour. So the idea that I got for all these sort of band tragedies was this vision that you see right now in front of you that I'm drawing. I just had this vision of like half of, well, it's not even half of a woman, it's probably like a little bit less than half, and yeah, she's like half skeleton on one side and then fleshy on the other, and the hair's just like flowing, and then there's like microphones dangling over her hands, sort of representing the industry that she's in, but it's also representing the tragedies and the the fatal outcomes of some of the situations that these people were in or put themselves in. So yeah, that's basically all it really is. You just really don't know when tragedy is going to strike, and this is kind of like the picture that this is representing, basically, that particular scenario. But anyway, that is it from me. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you do like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Dislike it, I really couldn't give 2 shits what you do, because any interaction that you give me goes towards the algorithm for other people to find me, and hopefully you watch whatever is left of this video, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.